having to try and cope with the traffic situation between the waterfront long before it was regenerated and the park at the other end. And the County Borough Council, as it was, effectively a unitary authority in the 1970s, employed a firm called Jameson Mackay and Partners, and they were, or still are, traffic engineers as a way of solving the traffic problems in this area. And among the other things they proposed were a decked highway across the waterfront here. It's similar to Westway in London, so with a continuous flyover. A junction, not small, not very much smaller. I mean, I find this difficult, but we still have a diagram somewhere. There's an allotment up here. As sort of to get the traffic to go in all its different directions. Something not too dissimilar from Spaghetti Junction at this end, great separated interchanges at this end, and wholesale demolition, and in order to accommodate the traffic. All of this happening to coincide more or less with the energy crisis in the early 1970s. And the very, very final act of the County Borough Council, when it went out of existence in March 1974, was to completely abandon these proposals as being immensely damaging to the new district council that was going to take its place. Partly, obviously, because energy issues were so uncertain, partly because of the sheer damage and the sheer cost of actually implementing that scheme. And when I came here in 1975, so I've been here a long time now, one of the things I started to work on was actually to put right much of the planning blight that had actually affected all of this area, particularly the historic areas and historic buildings, trying to rebuild the confidence of owners who'd had it completely shut to hell over a period of about 20 years by planning proposals, one after the other, that were never going to happen. So Ipswich has had some extraordinary experiments proposed for it, which have never happened, and has just about got away with it. But its planning history since the Second World War has not been a happy one until recently. That's an interesting background to, not so much the history perhaps of the 15th, 16th, 17th century, but the history of the 1950s, 60s and 70s has probably had a bigger impact than anything else.
Are you planning anything for the Olympics?
I'd like to build a swimming pool, wouldn't we?
The Olympics are a disaster. Absolutely, the amount of money it's sucking out of. It's certainly taking huge amounts of money out of heritage. I'm extremely dubious for it.
Is the swimming pool an Olympic-based plan?
Well, I think there were aspirations here that, as there were in a number of places that were in reasonable striking distance of London, that a national team might be based here if the facilities are good enough, and it was suggested that a swimming team, for example, might, and I think there was a suggestion that the swimming pool might be built on the back of that.
Crown Pool is felt to be part of the Selwood Day, even though it's only United Nations. So that's allocated for a retail-led mixed-use scheme, I think. Yeah. But anyway, redevelopment.
And the intention was that the swimming pool be built
opposite Portman Road.
The current new administration has decided that in fact it's going to refurbish the existing pool.
Has it?
Partly, I think, because frankly the Second Olympic legacy money simply isn't materialising. I think that the costs of providing in East London are going up exponentially. They're becoming so expensive. The amount of money available around to spread around the country elsewhere for facilities is simply no longer there, and so existing universities with sports facilities that Hawes residents will probably accommodate national teams, and the opportunity that we might have had here simply won't materialise, is my view about it. I think the Olympics is going to be a fantastic event, but in terms of what it's going to cost, it's appalling problem. And the Evening Standard last week, come back from a meeting in London, said that a further £1 billion is required, despite the fact that we've now been told that the costs of the Olympics are capped. So I don't know where it's all going to end. It's the most expensive Olympics in history by many a mile.
You said, I think it was 7,000 new properties that you have to build.
700 a year.
700?
So every year, yes.
770.
What proportion of those would you say are affordable properties?
Well, we're sort of driven by, to some extent, by government policy on that, which mandates us, and we do, to require 25% of all new residential developments of 15 or more houses, that's the threshold, to be affordable. So if you've got a development of 20 houses, 5 of those would have to be lined up by a developer for transfer and management to a housing association. And of those, a proportion will be rented, and a proportion will be shared ownership. The numbers obviously get quite big in respect of the waterfront schemes, where you're dealing with hundreds of units of accommodation. Or they will give us what we call a commuted sum, which is they translate what they would have cost them to provide affordable housing into a sum of money, which they then transfer to borough, which our housing people then use to pump prime other housing association schemes elsewhere. We hope to bring that threshold of 15 houses down in the local development framework policies to a much lower figure, possibly 5. So we can let that will be asking for affordable housing on quite small schemes. The planning system delivering affordable housing, I mean, it does its best, but in the old days we used to build council housing.
There's definitely tightening going on though. At one stage, when this principle was first brought in, it was something like 1 house in 40, then it went down to 1 in 25, now it's down to 1 in 15. It does vary across the country from one authority to another, or did. And there was at one stage, we found that developers would not want to provide affordable housing and conventional housing like on the same site. And so they would build their luxurious development overlooking the waterfront and look for a site elsewhere to provide the affordable housing.
Yeah.
Now, 2 things happened. Not only did we think that was not appropriate in terms of getting mixed communities and a proper balance of housing mix, and we didn't see any reason why affordable housing should be spread well away, in more inaccessible areas where sites are perhaps more easily available. But secondly, the developers in any case were actually running out of suitable alternative sites for providing affordable housing, so they might develop, say, a large development here and look to accommodate little bits of development elsewhere, certainly not have the sites to do it. Look much further away. We've now said no, you actually have to provide the affordable housing as part of the overall development. That's a challenge for the architects to provide a range of different housing types, all within the same scheme.
We try to get a good mix, don't we, of types and sizes of houses in a big development, so they're not all sort of 4 or 5 bedroom houses. Get a good mix. That's a case in point. This I can't remember how many residential units are involved, possibly 200 and odd. And this block here in the centre, which is something like a 3-storey block, that would be the affordable housing block. So although they're not walking down the same corridor of a block of apartments, you haven't got a mix of mainstream affordable housing. So that's very difficult for the housing associations to manage. At least we've got the affordable housing integrated into the development, not sort of stuck out
and overlooking some of the nicer state of space as well. So that's actually that's why we're particularly enthusiastic about this scheme. We're really keen that it should happen.
Whether it will or not is another matter, because that's the other thing about planning, best laid plans and all that. You have your allocations, you approve planning permissions, it's down to the market, and we all know that the housing market is, the economy generally is, so we're told, is taking a dip at the moment, so investors looking at carrying out a development like this will think very carefully about whether it's the right time to bring